Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Gibbon. Welcome to 2025. New year, new start. Hopefully everybody has had a fantastic period over the Christmas and New Year. You've all got up to going out, doing plenty of shooting. You've all enjoyed your new toys and the things you've wanted. Hopefully you are all ready to start the year and make a great year of it. We've got lots happening this year, from all the shows that will be going on to all of the activities in the stalking and shooting world. Obviously, some of the things are coming to an end soon, like our pheasant, duck and wildfowling seasons. But then that will open doors for new things. You can get out there with the clays as the days get warmer, get some clay shooting in. If you are into your clays, you can carry on with your deer stalking. We've got some new adventures coming up, be it from simulated stalking to simulated clay days. But stay with us. So what have we got going on at the moment? Well, 2025 has started with some exciting things. We've just had Alex from Hunter Gatherer cooking up. We've been on the hill. We've been out in the forestry. We've done some cooking in -7 conditions. I should say that, for the last week and a half, we have been covered in snow with fluctuating temperatures down as low in some parts of the northeast of Scotland as -20. And yet today we are on the 13th of January and those temperatures have flipped. It's actually 8 degrees. So from last night we were at -5 and we've just jumped to 8 degrees. Massive thaw going on. But in all of that excitement, with that snow on the ground, Alex and I have made some absolutely fantastic films and footage. So keep an eye on the Hunter Gatherer channel if you watch it, or if you don't subscribe to it, do. And you will see myself and Alex in action. One up on the hill getting in behind, two out stalking in some clear fell, and then we did some cooking at the back of a Land Rover. So who are we talking to today? Today we're talking to Stefan. He has a vast knowledge of thermal products. Being in retail, he knows exactly what's going on there. So we have a real in-depth chat as to what's going on. But we made this a two-part podcast. So in part one, we are going to talk about the technology, the things behind it, things to look for if you're looking for a thermal device or a night vision device, a little bit about Stefan and his background. And then part two, which will be out next week, will be a particular look at a new product just brought out by Pulsar and some other items in their range. So two really good podcasts to listen to if you're interested or just getting into thermal. Hopefully we can share some advice and some information that might be useful to you. The Outdoor Gibbon podcast is proudly sponsored by the Shooting and Hunting Academy, an online training platform and UK registered learning provider that provides a host of accredited and nationally available courses and masterclasses delivered by leading industry experts. Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Gibbon podcast. Today I am joined by another Swedish hunter. We've got Stefan and he is another Pulsar Prost staff member, but I thought this podcast is going to be a bit more on the technical side. So those people that want to know a bit more about thermal and all the kit that goes with it, that's what we're going to dive into. But anyway, here's Stefan. Let's get a little bit of an introduction about who he is. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Oh, so you'll have to ask the questions, mate, because it's a really hard to introduce myself.
Well, let's start off. The key question that I always ask everybody that comes on is, how did you get involved in the hunting, shooting, the stuff that you do?
I don't know. I think it's been part of me ever since I was born, even though I didn't start hunting when I got out, you know. It's always been something I wanted to do. And in Sweden, we have mandatory service in the military. And when basically I went into doing that, the outdoors activities and the hunting part and everything, it kind of came naturally. It was kind of related in some way.
Okay.
Yeah, and And after that, I just figured like, yeah, I'll start hunting. And I didn't really like the idea and go to buy meat in the store because I didn't know where it came from, and I wanted to have control and know that the quality was there. And I figured that like if I'm gonna eat meat, I'm gonna do it myself.
Okay.
And yeah, so I think my hunting interest is a mixture of things.
Okay, so yeah, obviously you've had training from the military as well. So you obviously
Oh yeah,
like shooting and enjoy that side of things, but then you've just
absolutely.
taken it to the next level now to be able to go out and actually harvest something that you can eat on the table kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think I mean shooting is just um, it's a tool. Hunting is so much more than just shooting.
Yes,
It's knowing your game, tracking them, all that stuff, and so on. And there's an art to it when you're good at it. You know.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Pulling the trigger is always, I've always said, is like, it's a very clinical process. At the end of the
yeah,
day, you
it's
squeeze the trigger, it happens in a fraction of a second, and something's
it's
released and
over.
normally falls over.
Yeah, and then you go from going hunting, and all of a sudden it's all right. Now let's process the meat and bring it into something I'm going to consume and so on. So you need very very careful what you do to keep it fresh and nice and all that stuff. Uh, and yeah, so it's so much to it. Yeah, I mean,
So
it for sure.
yeah, no, 100%. So the sort of the that leads on then. So obviously you've given us a little bit of background there, but your main focus really, because since I met you, has always been on the night vision and the thermal stuff. Now, does that come
Yeah.
from your time in the military?
A bit, yeah. I always so basically my interest in night vision and thermals and so on came from a need to be able to camouflage myself.
Okay.
And since all the thermals out there and all the different sensors that can find you, you want to be able to understand how they operate just to be able to hide yourself from them. Because if you
Yeah.
can't hide yourself, you're gone. And so I just started like reading up on how different sensors function, what they see, and how they see the universe, and how they turn a certain spectrum of information into a visible image for us. And then I started figuring out, like, all right, what can I do to hide from it? And
Right.
to get there, I had to understand the sensors. So
Okay.
that, and then when I learned how to do that, all of a sudden I had I guess, a semi-unique view on things, and um, companies wanted me as a consultant to look at what products to use and or to sell what is good, what is not good, and it just took me a completely different direction than what I ever thought was going to happen.
So how long ago was this? Because obviously thermal is still, it's not in its infancy anymore. I'd say it's well and truly, but I think I remember the first thermals playing with them back, well, it's got to be at least 10 years ago, and they were fairly
Oh God,
clunky
yeah,
devices.
yeah. I've been playing around with different types of night vision since. Oh, it must be almost. Yeah, it must be almost 20 years now.
Because the original night vision, obviously, for anybody that's listening that has no isn't really up to speed on it, the original night vision is obviously it's a phosphor that you excite with particles of infrared, and basically it amplifies it and it gives you a picture, doesn't it? At the end of the day, it's a
It's basically I'll say it like this: you take one photon and you turn it into electrons with different with different. It's a so you use a photocathode. I think you pronounce it like that, photocathode, like in an old television, and
right.
that becomes a image intensifier tube. So you take one particle of light and you smash it into um, let's just say a membrane, just to make it easy. That
Yeah.
turns that into an electron, and then you amplify those electrons to many, many, many times over. and then smash it into another filter, which turns that electron into a particle of light, to a photon, and then you have intensifies the little amount of light that comes in to. I'll say like this: I had an officer, and he had this amazing crash course, and it was like, so this is an image intensifier tube. You take the little bit of light that you get from the moon and the stars, it goes into this lens, black magic, lots of lights goes into your eyes. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so it just amplifies the lights 30 to 40,000 times over. So it's not really infrared, it's the available light that's
Right.
out there. And some of the wavelengths of light might be in the near infrared, and some of them might be in the visible spectrum, but the image intensifier does what it says. It intensifies the amount of light that goes through it.
Because most of the night vision now, with the modern upgrades to ICs and integrated circuits and stuff like that, has now become more on the digital side of things.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can use. I think there were video cameras back in the day that had the ability to see in the dark by basically taking away like a lens off the front of the sensor, and I think that's what most of the manufacturers have worked out, that you can harvest quite a lot of available light out there. Even though we think it's dark, it's still seeing light information, and then you can basically
and
produce a
it's like
picture.
this: if you take your digital camera, any digital camera, in front of the sensor you have a near infrared filter.
Yep.
And this near infrared filter, what it does is filters out the near infrared light, so that the color spectrum that goes through it becomes an image that we perceive as what we see in daylight.
Yeah.
But when you take that near infrared filter away, you allow the digital sensor to see the near infrared light, and then you can use wavelengths that are beyond our visual spectrum, and that turns
And it's like,
into visible light.
yeah, and basically, I think it's come on in leaps and bounds, because I think when I first started out, people were literally getting like a little tiny screen or a tiny camera that you could buy, and sticking it in a
Yeah,
bit of a tube behind the back of a day scope, and then a
yeah,
big screen on the top, so that you could
yeah,
and flood in the place. Like I used to have a big Striker 170 spot the lamping scope, but I got a massive great infrared filter on it. So this thing
yeah.
was chucking out so much infrared light, so that literally you could try and get an image back. It was quite a setup when you had to wander around with car batteries in your backpack and all the rest of it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what I find so, kind of amazing with everything that's been going on, the creativity that people come up with
Yep.
to solve an issue. And I mean, if it wasn't for that, experimentation and so on that people are doing, we wouldn't be where we are today. It's
No.
just putting ideas out there, and I like every idea, even when they're bad, are good. It just shows you. Even it would just show you if the idea is bad, we've proven that this is not working. And then when you come up with something good, it's good. And so, like in every aspect, every idea, try it out and see what happens.
But you look at some of the kit nowadays, and it basically, well, like the new one of the Pulsar scopes, for example, it virtually looks like a rifle scope.
Yeah,
And everything inside that, the image quality that you're getting out of it let's just talk about the night vision setup at the moment. It's a day scope and a night scope, so it's
yeah,
a camera, but it's producing that image on a screen. But at night, you're seeing in the dark
yeah.
and even without extra illumination, it's incredibly good.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I think for me, the format or the design of the housing is meaningless. If it looks like a regular scope, it looks like a regular scope. It doesn't really change what it's doing. For
No.
me, the thing is like with night vision, I would rather try to evolve and create something that is better ergonomics, And since it's a digital camera, as we get when it goes, I mean, in the end of the day, sensors, thermals, and digital night vision are just glorified digital cameras that see in different spectrums. And the
Yes.
shape that they can take on is whatever you dream of. They can look like a balloon and it will still work.
Well, Pulsar did
Uh,
for a while, didn't they? They actually did a very, it was their first sort of infrared camera was more of a boxy shape. It
yeah,
virtually looked like a box, but people didn't.
yeah.
I think there's still a big thing that hunters and shooters look at it and they go, well, it doesn't really look like a scope. And they seem
Oh,
to have
exactly.
this. They seem to have this thing that they want it to look like a scope on top of their rifle, whereas actually,
Mm.
if you go and a lot of people have moved over to a tactical platform to build
Mm.
their rifles on, and they no longer look like a traditional hunting rifle, but they still want to
Yeah.
have a tube on it, a piece of glass that looks
Yeah,
like a.
especially in Europe, I think that's important. I think in the US that is not really the same
No.
um, um, mindset. But for Europe, definitely is much more conservative and traditional, and you will see bolt action and straight pulls and whatnot. You know, it has to look a certain way, otherwise it's too military and
Yeah.
disgusting. It's revolting,
Yeah.
which I've always found like kind of hilarious because it's still, you know, a rifle, whether or not it's the design doesn't matter. It's the individual behind the rifle who does the difference. And when it comes to scopes, I think that, you know, a regular rifle scope has to look a certain way because it's optics.
Yes.
It
Of course.
has there's physics involved to get the magnification and the light transmission. So there's a certain point to the design. But with thermals, since it's a digital camera with different sensors and lenses and whatnot, it doesn't have to look like the traditional scope. You can
Well,
make
there's
it
no
smarter. You can make it
there's
different.
yeah, exactly. There's no transmission of light through the entire
No.
tube, which is all a rifle scope's actually about. Whereas the only thing inside the tubes when you put a thermal or a digital scope on there is just some wires and it's just a housing, isn't it, really?
Yeah. So I mean, you all the ergonomics. That's why one of my personal favorite scopes on the market, without even a question, is the Italian.
Yep.
Also Italian. The ergonomics is great. You got all the controls on the oculi in the back. It's easy to use. It doesn't matter if you're right or left-handed. The focus wheel is also smart. You got that little fin, and you can only turn it to 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock. Doesn't travel, you know, round and round and round. You can use that as somewhat of a way of figuring out how far away you are from the game you're looking for. So you got your distance there. You got the digital first focal plane reticles where you can mill your target and say, all right, I know that the wild boar is 70 centimeters high. If it's 7 mils high and it's a grown pig, that's 100 meters away from me. If it's 3.5 mils, it's 200 meters. If it's 14 mils, it's 50 meters. Like you have to learn a few things by angular measurements, but when you got that, it becomes second nature, and you don't
Yep.
need the LRF. The LRFs are great. Don't get me wrong; they are time savers,
Well,
but
we'll
they're
come on to
nice to
talk
have.
about
They're
those in
not.
a minute because I think
Yeah,
that's something that really has changed night vision
yeah.
and thermal massively. But we'll come back to that. So yeah, but the
Mm.
Talion again, it doesn't look like for anybody out there that doesn't know it, go and look one up because they don't look like your typical rifle scope. They're more of
No, and
a tube, a straight tube,
yeah,
and that's it.
I would say they are hybrid design because I know, like, you know, they went from the trail that was kind of like you said, brick shape, and it just basically the turned the trail into something that was semi-traditional, but not still.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
It was just a smart design, and they cut the weight down immensely. And they just made it into, I would say it's kind of like a thermal driven hunt scope, wide field of view, good
Yes.
enough detection range and identification range for most hunters, and especially for most hunters in Europe where we keep regularly within 100 meters with wild boar. I wouldn't say that it might be the best foxing scope because you want longer detection range and better ID range.
Yeah.
But for wild boar, great. It's up close and personal. You want that wide field of view. and it's lightweight, very agile, doesn't weigh your gun down. It's a very, very just a very agile scope, and it works great as a handheld because it's so short. It's very comfortable to hold in your hand, just like a spotter.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, so it's just I just think it's the ergonomics and the design of it is just ingenious.
So we'll kind of jump on now because obviously that's already touched us onto some thermal. So
Yeah.
thermal technology has come on in leaps and bounds. Obviously, it really
Hmm.
kicked off. Thermal was available and it was horrendously expensive, and you saw it on helicopters, or you
Yeah.
saw some scientist wandering around a lab with a great big device, very flat box and a fully colourful screen telling you. Fleur, for example, were the first people I think that came out with thermals, and they could
Forward
tell you the
looking
temperature.
infrared.
That's it. They could
Yeah.
tell you the temperature of pixels and all the rest of it because this device could do it. But
Yeah.
you'd be spending a fortune. And then obviously
Yeah.
thermal started to move into the hunting world, and handheld devices came out. But again, their detection range, the type of sensors in them, I think that's where we're probably heading to next is looking and talking about the evolution of the sensor and to
Yeah.
where we are today, because today it's mind-blowing, the quality in the image. But if we go right back to the beginning, the sensors were tiny at that time.
Oh, yeah. Very low resolution, big pixel pitch, massive lenses.
Yeah. But again, that's what a
Um,
thermal boils down to, isn't it? The key
yeah.
things are it's the quality of that lens, because it's not just a piece of glass. It's a specific material that only allows the the infrared through, really, isn't it?
Well, it's a mixture of things. So you basically have four different uh, parts of a recipe for a perfect soup.
Right.
Yeah, so I'll just look into my notes so I don't forget, because I just did a PowerPoint the other day um, on this one, this particular question itself. So yeah,
Well, because it's one of those things, because
so you
most
have
people
four
would.
things that I would say are important to look at. You got the sensor parameters, you got the optical elements, you got the display parameters, and you got the signal processing algorithms. So
Right.
basically, those are the four things that you have to look at. And as you were getting into, you got generations of different sensors, and the more advanced they go. Um, so one thing I've heard a lot of people talking about and saying like, oh, the smaller the pixel pitch, the better, and that is not really true.
Okay.
Yeah, so it depends on what you're doing. If you want something to be lightweight, then a smaller pixel pitch is great. But the
So
downside,
let's just
yeah,
explain that to our
yeah,
listeners. Obviously, you're talking about pixel pitch there. Is that
yeah.
what do are you meaning the size of the act? So when you've got a display, it's
Mhm.
actually how many tiny little squares that sensor can kind of see, isn't it?
Yes. So like the sensor itself is covered of different little squares,
Yep.
and the pixel pitch is the different the distance between each pixel in um, microns,
Right.
measured in microns. So if you got a 17 micron sensor versus a 12 micron sensor with the same resolution of the sensor, that 12 micron sensor will be about roughly 2/3 the physical size of the 17 micron. So it's way
Right.
smaller. Yeah, so very,
Yep.
very more complex. So just to make it easy, just say that 12 micron is smaller than 17 micron, period. Right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
There we go.
Mhm. Uh, and it also means that if you create a sensor with the same technology, the same year, the same generation of sensors, the 17 micron sensor will have a larger surface area, which means that it can detect more information.
Yep.
So it will be naturally more sensitive. However, to get the same field of view and detection range, the lens has to be equally larger.
Okay.
Yeah, so like since you're making stuff from germanium, which is quite expensive, Going to 12 micron makes sense because it's cheaper to manufacture, and you can use a smaller lens to get the same field of view and detection range.
Okay.
But you lose the sensitivity of the thermal sensor because it's smaller and it can't bring in as much information.
So you're not going to see as far. So you're not going to get that long distance detection range.
You can. So if a good example, we'll go to the Pulsar range because I got all the numbers in my head. So if you take the XP50, which was a long time flagship.
Yep.
Yep. And then you go from the XP. So the XP has got a 640 by 480 resolution, 17 micron, and a 50 millimeter f1.0 lens. So that means you have a 50 millimeter diameter of the lens and a 50 millimeter focal length between the. So the distance between the objective and the actual sensor is 50 millimeters. So it's 1:1 ratio.
Yep.
And then we go to the XG sensor, which has this exact same resolution, 640 by 480, but it's 12 micron. And you put a 35 millimeter f1.0 lens in front of it.
Right.
So you basically have the exact same proportions size-wise in comparisons.
Yep.
So the XP50 has a field of view of 12.4 degrees and a detection range of a target of 180 by 50 centimeters at 1800 meters.
Okay.
Whereas the XG35 has 12.5 degree field of view and 1750 meters of detection range.
So you've actually, so you've got a smaller device physically, but it's pretty much still able to detect at the same range and still give you the same quality of image.
Yes. The only difference is since the pixel pitch is smaller, the NEDT or millikelvins isn't as good because of the smaller pixel pitch.
Okay, so we'll just explain that to people. So when we're talking about the millikelvins,
we'll just say what everyone says is not true. Size matters.
Well, it's true though, but I think this is the big problem that people don't see. They're all, I think the world is obsessed with the biggest lens, the biggest is better. But actually, you've just explained it there that you can have one of those smaller devices and you can still get a quality image. What you were just coming on to talk about, you were going to talk about the millikelvins, which is the actual physical temperature of each of what each of those pixels is seeing.
Yeah, so they can see the difference in tiny differences in heat. And before we jump in on that, I'm just going to say, like, the Thermion 2 XP50 had a NETD, noise equivalent temperature difference, of sub 40 millikelvin.
Okay.
The Talion XG35 has a sub 40 NETD as well. But it's massively lighter, way smaller lens, and a smaller sensor, but with the same resolution, giving it the exact same picture quality as the old Trail 2 XP50. But the technology's moved forward. The 12 micron sensor does what the old XP sensor does nowadays. And we could go down to small lens and we could create actually a cheaper unit because producing a 12 micron sensor, which uses less materials because it's just physically smaller, and you can use a smaller lens, means again it's going to be cheaper to manufacture.
Yep.
So that's why, and that's also one of the reasons why I think is one of the smartest and coolest devices on the market. I just love it. You know me, Krypton is always going to be my favorite, but that's because of my hunting style. I like clip-ons. But if I would have a dedicated scope for damage control wild boar, I'd say Talion any day of the week.
Right. Yeah. But it's getting this across because I think the current trend that we see is everybody wants they think a bigger lens is going to give them a better image. And whereas you're explaining there, it's not necessarily true. You could actually have a smaller lens, but you can still have a quality, crisp image and be able to see stuff. It's all down to the makeup of the device, and it's the size of the sensor that you're putting behind it, really.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we, I would say, like, for you guys, I'm guessing the most part of I guess the most part, UK, for example, a huge percentage of the hunting would be foxing. Would that be
Yeah,
right?
I think that's where it's probably come from. So the UK
Yeah,
now, thermal really has been the big game changer for a lot of the guys that go out foxing,
yeah,
and that's what they want it for. But
yeah,
that's a whole other topic we can come on to in a minute
yeah.
anyway, talking about
Yeah,
identification
I'm just
using
saying, like,
thermal.
I think in respects to that, it's going to be like what I would look for in a unit is what kind of detection range do I have? Because that's you can kind of turn that into what kind of identification range do I have.
Yeah,
Um, uh, but the identification range is obviously going to be a lot shorter than the detection range. But I think there's a fine line with having a long detection range or identification range and the field of view, because you need enough field of view. So if you shoot, you want to be able to see what if you have a backstop. You want to be able to see if there's anything that could be put into danger or anything else. And you need a quite wide field of view for that.
absolutely.
But
Yeah,
you need enough resolution to be able to get that positive ID. And it's not, I think that is something. It needs to
100%.
be that is a male, that's a female. You should be able to go down to the very, very fine detail.
Yes,
Uh, um, so I think that is, I see people choosing scopes. I think is a terrible idea for different things. So, like I can only say what I see here in Sweden, and I see people choosing scopes that have a long detection range, like incredible detection range with very fine detail at very, very long ranges, but they have a field of view of less than 8.8 degrees.
yep,
And that, for me, when we're doing wild boar and damage control, that is way too narrow field of view. Yes, I will be able to see the hairs on them, but I won't be able to if I take that shot and the pig runs, which they can do quite often, 6 to 8 meters. When you take that shot with a narrow field of view, you're going to lose target acquisition,
yeah, very quickly.
and you will not be able to follow up. So if it's a bad shot, you will lose the target. And you want that wide field of view to be able to maintain control of the target. So you shoot it, and you can tell if it falls over or if it's a good shot, but it will run for a few meters.
Yep.
You don't lose track of it. And I think that's very, very important. So the field of view is very important. So if I'm going to be shooting wild boar less than 70 meters every day, I don't want to have a field of view that is less than 10.7 degrees. I
Yep.
want it wider than that, preferably. But if I know that I'll be shooting wild boar and I need to ID gender plus 70 meters, and that would be, say, 70 to 150 meters, which most of us don't do. But then then the 8.8 degree field of view will do fine.
The Outdoor Gibbon podcast is proudly sponsored by the Shooting and Hunting Academy. Through the Academy, shooters, hunters, and those involved in the use of firearms can gain an in-depth and unique level of training that enables them to shoot better, behave more effectively in the field, up their strike rates, as well as learning new skills. Crucially, those new to deer stalking, the Academy also offers the Proficient Deer Stalker Certificate Level 1, the PDS-1, a deer management certificate that is nationally recognised and accredited both by LANTRA and UK Rural Skills. Visit the Shooting and Hunting Academy to find out more. Let's get back to the show.
So it's kind of like choosing between a stalking scope and a driven hunt scope.
Yes. Oh, totally.
Yeah, and I think that's that's the question for even the UK. Like the massive lenses and everything. Yes, they do give you better ID at further range, but how far away are you capable of putting that first round shot with 100% kill clinically?
And a lot of that goes down to exactly, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's that can I take that shot, and is it
Yeah,
actually, have I got more scope than I'm actually capable of using? And I
yeah,
think that can be a big big problem. And I think with thermal, when we can bring that discussion into it now about LRF.
Yeah.
Originally, when thermal came out, it was so hard at night unless you knew every bit of your ground to be able to judge distance with a thermal. And
Mhm.
now you've got the capability of using the laser rangefinder to give you a bounce back in complete darkness and actually give you a distance, which is it's an absolute game changer for thermal
It
devices.
is. It is. It's a great game changer. But the problem I see with it is that a lot of people who don't have the right training or education will look at it as a cheat code to long range shooting.
Yes. Yeah.
With the ballistic calculators and everything, and like the ballistic calculators are great. They absolutely work. But setting the calculator up to calculate it right is not that straightforward. Like just for instance, like the muzzle velocity, that is just going to be true on the box for the certain rifle that they use to the factory. It's not going to be true for your rifle, and if it is that you go and buy a lottery because you you just
Yeah.
hit the
Yeah.
nail.
Yeah.
It's gonna be it's very rare. And then you have, did they use the same twist rate? What the spin drift right? Like, what was the distance between the axis of the scope and the center of the barrel? There's so many different parameters, and the BC of what they give you on the box is not going to be true for your rifle. You have to, figure it out yourself and calculate it, and that's another headache when you're getting into long range shooting.
Yeah,
It's
I'm not sure many guys are going to go out and want to do like 1,000 meters with a thermal, hopefully.
no,
But
no, no, and that's what I'm not what I'm saying. But I mean, even if it's within 200 meters,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
being able to get that calculator to work perfectly for you means you have to go out and collect a lot of data, and
and
a lot
that's
of
the
people don't
problem.
know that.
People don't want to do that because it's like
No.
measuring the heights and checking everything and
Yeah.
putting your rifle on a chronograph and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and then
It's
temperatures, humidity, how high up over the sea you are, like the air pressure and whatnot. There's so many different things that you need to understand and put into your data. And when you've done that, it's great. It works absolutely flawlessly, and I can vouch for it. But then you have the things that the computer can't see, which you can only train
yes,
for, and that's the wind. And when you're shooting at night, shooting in daylight's pretty easy. There's so many different tools you can use. You can use your kestrels to check the wind. You can look at leaves, how they and the branches, how they're blowing, the grass. There's so many different things you can look at to estimate the windage and be pretty accurate. But you need to train. You
yes,
need to
yeah,
do
yeah.
that all the time because it's perishable skill. And at night through a thermal.
Well, you don't get any feedback like that, do you? At all?
No, it becomes you have to kind of like, if you can, like what I've done when I've been trying it out and testing it on a range and under safe conditions. I basically wind estimate from what it feels like on my skin.
Okay.
That's really the only feedback from nature that I can get, or listening to how it sounds, and just from how it feels, estimating from what angle it's coming.
Yeah,
And if I'm lucky, I can see it through the thermals and the conditions right to give me that image.
yeah, yeah,
But it's still extremely difficult, and it's definitely nothing I would ever say it's ethical to use to put a perfect kill shot at a further distance. So it
no,
just for an
no,
example, if like we're playing with an idea here, like we're shooting a fox,
yep,
vital area is like my fist, what, 10 centimeters?
yep, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, decimeter. And let's say we're shooting at 300 meters, and I'm 0 to 100, and an average bullet drop would be somewhere around 46 centimeters. But if I have a straight full value wind from, say, left to right, I'm going to have, with 3 meters per second wind, I'm going to have a 15 centimeter point of impact shift in windage.
yep,
And that is not even, looking at the Magnus effect. 300 meters doesn't really matter, but it's still, there's so many things that can go wrong.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And I think this is the problem. You've just hit the nail on the head. People think now they press the button and the LRF tells them that. They then look at the ballistic data that they've got, that they've set up, and oh, that'll do, and they take the shot. But the it again, it's a very useful tool. But my biggest reserve when thermal first came out was I'm not buying a thermal scope, and that was probably 7 or 8 or probably 10 years ago,
Yeah.
purely because it's like you can't sit with thermal, you can't see what's in front or behind it in some cases. Now, don't get me wrong, the new technology and the scopes that have come out and the better resolution and the sensors and everything that's there in the software, you get a lot more foreground and background information as well as your target. But it's still one of those things that it has to be 100% positive identification. And it's a really tricky point to be. And now you've got the LRF on there, it does make life a little easier because at least you're not kind of guessing the distance.
Yeah, and I think, like, the LRFs are great, and they can be put to a very ethical use, and basically tell you, all right, you are within your capability.
Yep.
And that's the way I look at the LRFs. They just help me to understand, all right, if I take this shot with all the different environmental factors and wobble and so on, will I be within the vital zone? If the answer is yes, then it's an okay shot. If it's maybe, I'm without, I'm outside of my comfort zone, and then it becomes unethical. So the LRS for me, they're just a tool to tell me when I'm within range. And then what your range is, I'm not going to say that my range is the limit for everyone or the shortest or whatever. It's, you need to go and practice. And if you know that you can make that shot 100% every day, any weather, whatever situation, then the answer is completely yes. It's ethical.
100%.
If it's not, skip it. Move in closer. Don't stress it.
So moving on, let's talk about some other things. Obviously, all of this development of sensors and stuff like that, we've also seen massive improvements, obviously, in software within all of these systems. Now, if you've got a microprocessor, which is obviously in there, which I don't, hopefully people understand that there's basically a computer that's interpreting the information that touches the screen to give you the picture on the screen that you're looking at through the viewfinder end. There's it's time delay, and it's how fast that processor's working on that, so that there is what's called latency, I think is the word we're looking for.
I call it latency, at least, because I look at it, it's going to be the delay between real time and what's going on in the display.
And that's really
even if
important.
You have a 50 hertz to 60 hertz image, there might be a very, very slight delay or a very long one, depending on how the software that interprets the image works. So for an instance, like most people who's got a cell phone knows this, you can take beautiful low light pictures with your regular phone like these days, and they will amplify the light. But the shutter needs to be open for a longer time, and then before you see when you take the picture and it's had the shutter open for a while, it still takes a while to buffer the information and then produce a brighter image.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. So you intensify the light, and algorithms kind of figure out what is what. Now, you can do the exact same thing with thermals. So when Pulsar, for example, are specifying the NEDT, and that is again noise equivalent thermal difference. That's what it stands for. And NEDT is stated in millikelvins, or thousandths of a degree, and 1 Kelvin has the same value as 1 Celsius.
Yep.
Right. And NEDT is the smallest difference in temperature a detector can pick up. It corresponds to a signal to noise ratio of 1. When the temperature difference is equal to the noise, then the detector has reached its limit. Now, here's the thing. If you use algorithms, you can reduce noise and so on, and you can improve the NETD with software. But that doesn't mean that the sensor has gotten any more sensitivity or whatever. It's just you're bringing in the information, you're amplifying it with software, and that takes a bit, that takes a bit of memory, and that's going to slow the process down. That's going to be a bit latency between real time and what's going on the screen.
So that's really important, because obviously if you're out there trying to shoot a living animal, or anything that's alive, they can move, and if you've got a delay from what you're actually looking at that screen, that could be literally the case of that animal stepping and being in a different position to what you think it is when you squeeze the trigger.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It's what happens is if you have something with very, very, very short latency, then you can basically shoot just as well as you could with your analog day optics.
Yes.
Which is the most important thing for me in any scope. I don't care about the NETD. If the NETD is good enough to give me the information that I need, male, female, backstop, whatever, that's good enough. For me, it's being able to put that bullet exactly where I want it.
Yeah.
And if my device is so slow that it takes almost 0.2 to 0.5 of a second, like it's delayed by that much.
Yeah.
It's shit.
Well, things can move, can't they? You could literally, that deer can walk 2 steps forward.
Yeah, just imagine, like, just go to the range and shoot offhand. Try that out with your day optics.
Yeah.
And look at what kind of. And here's a thing I think is important to define. What's the difference between precision and accuracy?
Yep.
Yeah. So I might get in the translation wrong, so you have to forgive me if I'm using the words wrong. But for me, accuracy is what I can do together with my rifle. Precision is what my rifle can deliver without me as an idiot behind it.
Yeah.
So let's say that my rifle is precise enough to give me quarter MOA under quarter MOA, 100 meters, no wind, no nothing, no human error, just mechanically that precise. That's less than 7mm groupings at 100 meters.
Yeah,
Extremely
you put the wobbly living creature that breathes behind it.
Oh yeah, that's suddenly that terrible chimpanzee with breath of a whale behind it.
Yeah, and all of a sudden that rifle that is very precise without, as you say, the accuracy is all down to the creature squeezing the trigger.
Yeah, and then I have to figure out what is my accuracy together with this very precise system. And when I practice, when I go to the range, I'll stand offhand, and then I will determine, like, all right, what is a okay grouping offhand on a moving target?
Okay.
And so I'll shoot moving targets that go left to right and right to left. And if I cannot be within the vital area with a good margin, 100% every time, then it's further away than I should shoot on a living target. Okay. If I can do it all the time, over and over and over, and always hit, then it's within my capability. That's my accuracy. That's
a good way to be, though, because at least you know that you're going out there and you're using the ethical procedure of going, well, actually, I can't shoot this properly at that range, therefore I shouldn't do it, because it's unfair to the creature I'm actually taking the shot at.
It's unfair, and from, if we go to legality, so our laws are a bit different from a lot of other countries. So if I shoot an animal and I wound it, then I have a legal obligation to have a qualified search dog on the spot within 2 hours. And I have to track the animal down and kill it. Otherwise, that could mean losing license, losing, my possibilities to hunt and everything, because the ethics, basically, it's a life, and if we wound it, we don't mean to wound it, we mean to kill it.
Yes, yeah.
And do it humanely. But if we miss and wound it, it's our responsibility to track it down and end the suffering. And if we don't, we can be fined. There can be consequence legally. So that is by law. And that is why it's so important for us to go out and practice and make sure that we are within our limits always. And your limit is your limit. It's personal. You can know where that is.
100%.
Yeah. But we do have kind of a standard where we say that moving targets should be. We're doing the moose test. The moose test is standard 80 meters.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's a huge target.
Yeah, but the vital area on that is still, when it's moving, it's still a tricky thing to shoot at, isn't it?
It is. Well, it can be for sure. It's still huge, but 80 meters is something, if you practice, should be very obtainable.
Yep. Okay.
But then you get to other game like roe deer, and when they come in full speed, even at 50 meters, it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. They're bouncing all over the place. The timing is they should be standing still, because they are very, very difficult targets.
Yeah, 100%. Anyway, so let's pull that back round again. So we were talking about that latency. So there are things to look, if anybody was going out to look at buying a scope or anything like that, these are important things to make sure that there's not too much software processing going on in there that's going to give you a massive delay, basically.
Yeah.
And I think Pulsar, really, that when what I've seen so far, most of their processing, it's done where that delay is minimal. There is virtually none.
It's lightning fast. I've been trying so many devices over the years and playing around with them. Years ago, we did this video where I was doing 1,000 yards with a thermal, and I kind of feel like that video became more of a PR stunt than I wanted it originally. I don't think anyone really intended for that either. We wanted to showcase that you could use a Pulsar thermal and use it just as accurately as you can with your day optics, because of that lightning fast process between reality and display or processing. It got lost there, but that was always the point of that. And I still think to this day I have not seen anything faster.
And that's the key, because at the end of the day, that's the most important part, is at least it's like a 1-for-1 for what you're looking at. That viewfinder is actually the reality that's actually happening out there.
Yeah, it's very, very close to it, at least.
Yeah.
And I've been trying this out. I've been trying this out on moving targets, and I'm looking at my lead. So when I'm shooting a running moose target at 80 meters, I use my day optics and I check what kind of lead do I give it to get that perfect shot.
Yep.
And then I've been trying that out with my thermals, and I got the same lead. But then I've been trying some other devices out, and I have to increase that lead, telling me there's a lot of latency.
Okay.
And I think, if I'm aware of it, I can kind of compensate for it to a certain degree. But when it comes to erratic behavior and so on, then it becomes unpredictable.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So for me, that latency needs to be as close to reality as humanly possible. And the only way I've come up with to try that out for myself is moving targets on a shooting range, testing the lead, or having a friend, and this is obviously with the device not mounting on a rifle.
Yeah.
Just to get that out there. I look through the device with one eye, and I check reality with my God-given spare eye. That
right.
for some reason I need. And I look, and then I have them waving back and forth with their hands pretty fast. And you can tell pretty much immediately if there's latency, because in the thermal, it will be after reality quite a bit.
Oh,
But if
okay.
it's almost simultaneously, then you have lesser latency. But it's quite an easy test you can test. Or just go to the range and shoot offhand and look at, all right, I'm shooting with my day optics. This is my grouping. And then you take an average. So you shoot a couple of groups, you take an average. What's the group size? You switch over to your thermal, do the same test. And if there's a lot of latency, the group size will be quite a bit different.
It will. It's because obviously you think it's on bull all the time, and it's not. It's bouncing all over the place.
No, you're half a meter away from it. It's just like
absolutely. So that kind of brings us on to quite a nice topic now. Obviously, thermal technology is now becoming more and more. Well, it's everywhere. We see so many companies, manufacturers offering equipment, but is it getting to the point where in some way we need to have, I don't know how the rest of the world are doing it, but it's down to the point of training and a bit more foundations or a bit more information on it, because anybody technically can go out, they can buy a thermal scope, they can stick it on their rifle today, and they can go out night shooting. Now or they can go out shooting with it. There's a big difference. When you went out lamping, you had to learn a bit more about what was going on at night and the rifle and all the rest of it. Obviously, thermals, just buy a thermal and go. It's do we think there should be some training or something like that available?
I don't know. I think it depends on what is required to become a hunter.
Okay.
So I think that so there's a huge difference between countries in the world. In Germany, I know that to become a hunter, it's like getting your driver's license. It's a very long process. In Sweden, it's almost the same. It's not as long as the German process, but it's still, you have to get call it a driver's license.
And I think in Poland was the most complicated. When we're speaking it was fairly difficult. Whereas in this country, you don't really have to do anything. You just get your rifle and off you go.
Yeah, and I don't want to step on anyone's toes or anything, but like in my mind, that's kind of madness. I wouldn't want anyone to get into a car without a driver's license, because it's still a machine.
Exactly.
If you have a driver's license, you pass a few tests. They have made sure that you are aware of a few things, and it's just the same thing with shooting. I don't think shooting is more dangerous than driving a car or many other sports or activities, but having a hunter's certificate or a license or educational exam, whatever it's called in different countries, it's kind of just, you got that driver's license. You know that everyone went through the same things. They had to qualify. They had to do the same test, and they reached a certain standard.
Yes.
And when it comes to shooting in general, I think one thing that makes me a bit scared is they might be worded a little bit differently in different countries, but when you look at professional usage, like military and police, and this should be standard for all the civilians as well, you have 4 main rules for safe rifle or gun handling. Number 1, everyone should know this, and if you don't, then you should evaluate yourself. Always treat and handle every rifle or gun as if it's loaded.
Yep.
Number 1, yeah. Number 2, never point the muzzle towards anything you don't intend to shoot. Number 3, keep the finger away from your trigger until you're pointed at or aiming at the target.
Yep.
And number 4, be aware of your surroundings, what's between you and the target and beyond, and never shoot anything you have not identified. Now, these are 4 rules, and they live in symbiosis. So it's not that they come in certain 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just they occur at the same time.
Yes, 100%.
And if you look at that, it becomes very, very obvious. If you go out daytime, you have your eyes, your your built-in sensor to detect the world and ID what you're looking at.
Yeah,
You
100%.
see if you have a backstop. You see if it's a horse. You see if it's a human. You see if it's a car. You can see if you've got backstop or not, and so on. The problem I see with nighttime hunting is that some people just get a rifle scope and they mount it with non-QD mounts fixed to the rifle, and they go out scanning the terrain. Like, as the risks would disappear when it goes black.
Yeah.
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 So you need, I would say, invest in your handheld units, and the scope could be lesser quality, or get something that you can use as a two-step unit, like both handheld and rifle scope at the same time with
Yeah.
QD mounts. And then you got the possibility to actually have a very ethical and very safe method of hunting.
Yeah. 100%.
And so to some degree, maybe yes, depending on where you are, the training and courses should be mandatory. And in some cases, no, because they might already have a lot of training and so on. So I think that is depending on where you are. And I'm not saying that people don't understand this, because I think for a lot of people, this might be, kicking in open doors. But for some people, it might be, oh shit, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, no,
And
100%.
then,
That's what
it's
it's there to do.
obviously,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's asked the
and
question. Yeah.
yeah, and then it's something that I think I run into quite often is the lack of knowledge of ricochets and bounce of bullets, and how incredibly long distance. Like, let's say you hit a branch, you got a 308, you hit a branch as thick as your pinky. The angular deflection of the bullet in a cone can be 1,000 mils. And just to put that in perspective, if you take an analog watch and you put the indicators of your watch to the position of 10 to 2,
Yeah.
the direction of that you're aiming is 12 o'clock. But the bullet, if you hit the branch as thick as your finger, can deflect within that angle of 10 to 2.
Oh, absolutely.
1,000
Yeah.
mils. And then with 308, the distance that we take into account when we're writing a risk assessment is 640 meters within that cone.
Yeah.
It's a huge distance.
Well, I did an interesting. We were out with some steel targets, and I had the Telos, and I was actually watching the guy shoot the steel plate, and it's phenomenal. 308 hits that, and you see hot material go in two directions. Now, bearing in mind that's a Hardox target, and it's a reactive plate, so it's supposed to push everything down. But when you see a piece of hot material disappear off, not vertical, but out at your, like you said, between your 10 to 2, just carrying on into the distance, you're just like, well, it just goes to show if that it's how far bits of metal, hot material, okay, it may not have any ballistics left on it, but it still could cause injury or damage to whatever it hits.
Yeah, I mean, if you we take another material, we take a dead material as concrete or stone.
Yep.
And again, we shoot 308 at it. And let's say this is a vertical object, like concrete wall, and you're standing 40 meters away from it. The risk of bounce back, which would not be very pleasant to put, will be 50 meters.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's certain things like, and I guess, these numbers that I'm saying are risk assessments that we use to determine if we can do something as an exercise and be safe. So there's obviously a bit of a buffer zone there.
Yeah.
But
it's things like
still,
that. That people need to remember and take into account.
And I wish, this would be something that would be standard to teach to everyone. just because I don't think people mean to do stupid things or bad things. Like if you don't get the understanding of the risks that are involved, and you don't you need people who work within science to prove that these are numbers that we will have, and if we add this, then it will be safe.
Yeah, no,
Then you can
100%.
account for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's the
Yeah.
thing. Everybody wants sales. Companies out there all the time. They want to.
Okay.
They want to move forward. But I think there has to be some sort of look. You're about to fit this device that allows you to see in the dark. Realistically, training or go shoot with somebody that's used one just to get that bit of knowledge is vital.
Yeah.
So
And
let's last part.
Yeah. That's
Well, that's it. Obviously, we know there's some nice fun stuff coming up, but
Yeah.
what's your where do you see thermal going?
Oh wow. I think it's like with everything. Almost everything we do is going to become digital, and it's going to take the kind of like the fun out of the game. And thermals have gotten to a point where they are so good that we become so efficient that we have to think about, what are we doing? Are we out to have fun? Are we out to control a problem?
Yep.
Or are we out to harvest food, But it needs to be remembered, like, how much do I need to do what we're doing? So if it's damage control, obviously damage control might be thinning the herd, reducing the numbers. It can also be just not even shooting involved, it's finding them and scare them off.
Yeah.
That could be another aspect to it. And then you have, well, I want to thin the herd, but I don't want to eradicate or anything. I just want to collect some food, and also at the same time protecting the crops and saving the farmer's livelihood.
Yep.
So the thermals and the sensors just make us more efficient. We become better, or easier, and that's where I think that the ethics of a hunter becomes the responsibilities of us as hunters become bigger. What do we do most part? Well, preservation of nature and species. We want to have a good population that is healthy and strong, so we get the best quality meats, but we also want nature to, be strong and healthy.
Yeah.
So it's keeping the balance. And I think if you're not careful, some people just go out and be greedy because it becomes easy.
It could, well, exactly. The technology makes the actual process of doing this shooting at night a lot simpler. Whereas beforehand it would have been a lamp and it would have still been your skills and ability. Now, as you say, it has become easy.
Yeah, but just imagine when you didn't have the lamp.
Yeah. It was daytime
brought
only.
you into another realm. It took you into that becoming better. It's just like with, just look at it like this. If you look at cars 20 years, 40 years ago, would you buy one today if you had young babies in the car? No.
Oh, no.
They're not safe. They're not safe enough.
Yeah.
It's the same thing here. Technology has improved everything. And we forget the background humbleness of it all. Like, why do we go
the
that
actual
way?
hunter at the end of the day. That's what you got to. If you still want the traditional style of hunting, then it's. I always sometimes say it's leave the thermal at home, because just go back to the binoculars and the day vision, and that's what you need.
Yeah, and sometimes, like I look at thermals as they are tools for something different than hunting usually. At least here in Scandinavia or Sweden, they are tools for damage control.
Yeah.
We got
I see far too many.
barbara.
Yeah, I see far too much now where the thermal is the alternative to the binoculars.
Yeah.
and I will use this because I can see everything, and then I'm just going to hone in on it. Whereas actually
Yeah.
the whole thing, the thrill of the chase sometimes is
Yeah.
go out there. Oh, I didn't see that hiding behind that
No.
bush.
But then, like, I think, like, I can take it to another perspective and look at it as like, all right, maybe you're the hunter who goes out once, two, three times a year, and you don't need more than two or three animals
Yeah.
to provide you meat for the whole year for your family, unless you have enough to do with everything else. Then this is a tool to bring that meat home, and if you're not greedy, you're not gonna overtax the population of wild game. You choose the right game, bring that home, and you become more efficient.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Efficiency means that you don't have a
yeah. So
wasted trip.
then it becomes a great tool. But if you use it for everything, you just might be, you get greedy, you shoot too much, and that's not hunting. A hunter will kill what they need, and they will try to maintain a good population and take care of a nation, all that. To me, at least, that is.
No, 100%. I agree with
Yeah.
you. And I
It's
think that brings
yeah.
us to a quite a nice end to our discussion of thermals. To
Yeah.
be honest, I think you've got your beer in hand, so nobody can see this, but he's got his beer in hand.
I guess I
He's
am.
enjoying himself there. So yeah, well, thank you, Stefan,
Yeah.
for spending the time to go through and just talk a bit more in depth about thermal tech. And if anybody's got any questions, you
Yeah.
can find him on the socials or ping him a message and ask more. He's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to thermal technology.
Thanks, man.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, no, no, pleasure.
Well, thanks again for listening. I hope that has enlightened you a little bit on thermal technology. It's not just a case of buying a device that's cheap and has a big lens on the front of it. Sometimes there's a bit more going on behind the scenes. And some of that, if you are shooting live prey, is really critical to get right. And save your pennies and buy a product that at least you know is going to provide you a long time of service and look after you. Anyway, join us again next week for part 2, where Stefan and I get in depth on a couple of new products that have recently hit the market. So we'll speak to you again next week.